Hello there, welcome to Genesis Models. My name is Bob Waldron and welcome to episode 14 of the Phantom build. Now in this episode we've got a little bit here and there that we're going to sort of mess about with, but really mainly what we're going to be doing is getting ready and preparing for our spraying. So, you know, basic sort of nice, you know, cleaning the model, how to clean it up, removing of sort of leftover paint or stuff like that, but just getting all ready, nice grease free sort of surface to spray on, which we're going to start off with this natural metal finish. This is what we're going to sort of really sort of focus on, getting this natural metal finish down, you know, how to prime it, how to sort of, you know, put down these buffable paints, you know, how to buff them up. And if we just bring you in, you could just see this gorgeous, absolutely, these paints are amazing that we use here, by the way, by Mr. Metal Colour. Really gives you an absolutely gorgeous finish. So time to just shut up and get spraying. Right, with all the canopy, cockpit all nicely in there, we just want to double check. We do have maybe a little bit over, you know, you could just maybe see a little bit of the liquid mass sort of going over there. I just wanted to check that. I'm okay around around these edges because we're using masking tape, but because we've got the liquid mass here, we just want to sort of cut this up, right? Should be nice and easy with a nice little blade, just to sort of cut into this, right? And then you can just pretty much sort of peel these little bits away. Right, and you know, you just sort of go all the way around and just make sure, you know, none of the liquid mask is kind of coming out over the sides, because it will affect the paintwork by sort of it being all raised and horrible, and you don't want that. So just double check that. Other things that we've got going on here, I mean, as you can see, I'm just working my way through all these bits and sanding these areas just like we've done, and I've shown you already on the model. Another one is just here. This is a panel, right? And you know, when we put panels on there, they don't normally kind of fit so well. As you may be able to see, there is a gap just there, right? This is a nice quick Vallejo putty technique, really quick, easy and simple. Just to quickly show you, we've got this nice Vallejo plastic putty. We simply inject exactly where it needs to go, like there. We get ourselves a cotton wool bud, maybe a little bit moist, and we just roll that across there, right? So basically while it's still wet, it means we haven't got to do any sanding or anything like that. And as you can see, it's gone right where the gaps are. You can actually see the white, it kind of brings it out, really showing where the gaps are. That's nicely sealed in and sorted. Just wanted to sort of quickly jump back to scribing as well, because there was one thing I did forget to show you. When we come to things like this, these leading edges, we do have recessed panel lines and everything that go around leading edges. Now this is pretty hard to get a template in there and hold a template, and it is quite hard to use something like a P cutter on something like this. This is where actually I like to use the saw. These saws are really good to get your hands on. They are the cmkkits.com. We do have these in the store, by the way, and you know, we have these really sort of, it's almost like photo etch, right? And they've turned it into a saw. And if we go to a really nice sort of, I think they call it the ultra fine razors or whatever, this side anyway, it's really sort of very fine. I've already done them actually, so I'm just going to do this lightly just to show you. But basically, again, we're holding this in that same sort of stable position. We are finding the recessed panel line that's already there, and we're going to just move the model with it. Sorry, you went off camera there. On the recessed panel line, we're going to move the model with it, right? And it just finds it, and you drag a little bit back as you go in, and I just find that, hopefully, as you can see, gives us a much more sort of nicer, neater, straighter edge for getting things like where you got leading edges where they're really sort of sharp. Admittedly, after doing that, I do kind of personally come in with a P cutter, because once you've got a recess there, it's a bit easier to follow and whatnot, and that's what the razor saw does. It sort of gives us something a bit easier to follow, and the pea cutter then just sort of neatens it up, because the razor saw can be a bit rough when making recesses, so I do like to tidy up with the pea cutter, and hopefully, as you can see there, it just kind of gives you a nice recess. Now I'm feeling fairly confident that, you know, all my filling, sanding and scribing is done. Right, we want to now prepare for good old spray stage, so it's nice to move this along. Now I do recommend that after we clean this up, if you want to do any rivet work, now's sort of like the best time to do it, because as I say, these rivets that you can put in there are quite delicate and they're easily filled in with sanding dust. You know, I always kind of like leave it to the last stage if you can, and do it around about now. Now when it comes to this, you know, you want to start wearing gloves, because, you know, when it comes to, I mean, especially when we start doing all our natural metal finishes at the back here, this is going to be masked up to hell. We don't want the masking tape peeling the paint away. So, you know, this is a really nice stage in which we make sure everything's clean and got rid of any sort of grease. So just getting out some kitchen paper towels, right, and really good product to get your hands on, which if you've watched any of my videos, we have this is some nice IPA. It's what we use to make the homebrew thinners with. You know, it's what, 1 part IPA to 2 parts water. Really makes good thinners, but it's also good for cleaning up your models. Now sadly I haven't got a little pot, so I'm gonna have to sort of struggle along with this a little bit, but what we do, kitchen paper towel, make it a bit wet with our IPA, and what we can simply do is just nicely sort of all around the model, we just nicely sort of clean this up. Now the cool thing is about IPA is, well, like what they use for electronics and stuff, so it will clean up the area, it will get rid of any sort of fingerprints, dust, debris, grease especially, which is what you want. And the cool thing is as well, because it's IPA, it evaporates really fast, so, you know, we're not going to have pools of, like say if you use soapy water, you know, you're going to have that sort of pooling up inside and around. You have to wait for it to dry and everything. IPA cleans up really nice, and it evaporates really good. Now you may, I mean, it's up to you if you really, but as you can see, I've sprayed on all my sort of problem areas so I can see, you know, what problems and issues that we've got. Now really it kind of acts as a bit of a primer, so no real worry about it really, but if you really wanted to, you know, the IPA can clean up this black paint really good. So I could just rub at this with the IPA. It does take a little bit of rubbing, and I'll just do this little bit just to sort of show you, but as you can see, most of that has like come up already. Good old toothbrush, right, dip it into our IPA just here, and with the toothbrush, right, you brush it around, give it a nice bit of a good scrub, and hopefully, as you can see, it's coming out of all the recessed panel lines, all the recessed rivets, and you've cleaned that paint up nicely. Right. It's also a good idea to maybe do this all over the model as well, because again, the sanding dust gets into the recessed panel lines. Right, you spray onto those recessed panel lines with sanding dust in there, and it fills in all your recessed panel lines and your recessed rivets. And then you can come along with a kitchen paper towel, and you can just clean up sort of like the dirty IPA that we've sort of created, because it's mixed in with all this paint. And as you can see, clean that paint up off that area really nice. And you want to do this all over the model, all nicely and ready, and should be all good for spraying, and hopefully, fingers crossed, you shouldn't have any problems with, you know, paint getting peeled up through things like masking tape. And it also prepares the surface really nice for spraying on your primer. We're now all nice and cleaned up, so let's just turn this over. We're going to spray this area just here ready for doing our natural metal finishes. Now when it comes to natural metal finishes, good to spray black, not always, in this case we are, and a good one to use is Untitled Lacquer's black primer, and it's a micro filler, because when it comes to natural metal finishes, any kind of mistakes get really brought out with natural metal finishes. So where you're doing your natural metal finishes, you kind of want to be spot on with all your filling, sanding and scribing. So good to have this micro filler as well, because that kind of helps get in, fill in those sort of micro sanding scratches that you have. Sadly, I've run out of this, so pretend I'm actually using it now, but I'm just going to use some of this 057 black. This is by Vallejo. As always, you know, you want to get in a nice bit of some homebrew, or use the Vallejo thinners as well. You want about a 50-50 mix, right? And we're going to use this as a primer. Right, so I'm just putting a nice bit in there. Always good to just mix it with a paintbrush, right? Nice old paintbrush just for mixing, making sure it's fairly clean at least. Right, and when we spray stuff on, we always want to start off with a light misty coat, right? We want to make sure the paint is going to stick to the model. So I do find that actually, well, I mean, you want to around about a 20 psi as well, maybe a kitchen paper towel, just to make sure, you know, it looks like it's flowing fairly well. Right, and all we're going to do is just at the back area here, just where we're going to have the natural metal finish. As you can see, I'm just doing a really sort of light misty coat on here. Right, so as you can see from that, I mean, it looks all sort of smoky, not really going down that much, but that's what you want, that first coat to be nice and light, really sort of a misty coat, and it just helps the paint that we're going to spray on top of this now, just helps it sort of stick a little bit better. Which then what we want to do is move up to like a normal light coat, where we actually see, you know, the paints going down, as you can see just there, and this should just help it stick that little bit better. And as you can see, pretty sort of quick and easy. And then what we want to do is build that up until we've got a nice black coat on there with good coverage. Another little tip while we're at it, we do have to do these as well at the back. We could use locking tweezers, but I do like to get a nice cocktail stick in there. Quick, easy. Right, we just drill a hole into an inconspicuous place, i.e. where it's going to glue to the model. Right, and you just want to get it just deep enough so as we can get a nice cocktail stick just in here, being careful of the edges, which this one is quite close to the edge. I've kind of misjudged that one. I'll probably redo that later, right, because it is close to the edge, as you can see, and it's kind of might bulge. But you know, you stick your stick your cocktail stick in there, and we can now spray this black as well, because there's going to be natural metal finishes just on here also. Right, before we continue with that, I want to sort of make sure we get all of the acrylic based paints out the way first, because we're going to be using sort of nice natural metal finish paints. Now I've just gone off, now inside here we have things like ceramic plates, and they look a bit white and then them really dirtied up, so we want to get our base on these. Now first off, I've primed it. Now I've used some surface primer, which is 70615. This is by Vallejo. We'll go into more detail on that later. But first off, we're going to be using this really nice colour here, which is their white grey, which is 71119. Really cool colour for doing ceramic. Now I've just poured it straight into our colour cup here, because this is only a little bit, this is. I don't mind not thinning down these paints, because apparently you can sort of spray Vallejo paints neat, but I do find that, you know, for little bits that's fine, but when you do big bits they just start to clog up and you need to thin them down. But this is just a little bit, so we can nicely move along with this. Now the thing is, we are spraying into a tube, right? And the problem is with spraying into a tube is that to try and get down to the middle, we're going to get more paint at the top, and when that happens, right, the paint gets thicker, the paint gets wetter, starts pooling up, not going to look good. So with this, I do tend to kind of go off and just go, you know what, if it takes 6 or 8 coats to do it, then that's what it takes. Just lightly do it like so, stop, let it dry. Just let it dry, because you don't want that top part pooling up and getting really wet and all that nasty stuff. So just take your time with it, maybe even a quick sort of try and get right in there. as well, sort of, you know, with your airbrush. But again, don't stay in there too long because it can pull up and then you end up getting these big thick sort of spider leg effects going on. So I'll do that off camera. So with all our acrylic painting now done, this is probably a good time to actually do a quick color change. Quick color change is, you know, we're not stripping down the whole airbrush and getting it properly clean. You know, I just like to sort of spray out what's left in there, you know, get some airbrush cleaner, whichever you kind of prefer. I have done a home brew. I do like to just nicely sort of pinch the end of the nozzle. We press down the trigger, pull back, and it gurgles it all up, which is cleaning this inside. Now, see, it's important that we do a good colour change, really, because we're going to be moving into lacquer-based paints, and you know, the two don't really mix-ish well. You don't really want to be mixing them, but actually they do kind of mix kind of well, actually. But just gurgling that up, right? Then we're going to tip the colour cup upside down. We do this because what we want is any sort of dried up bits we want coming out the colour cup end. We don't want them trying to come out that tiny little 0.4mm needle, right? So that's come out that end. I'm not going to spray through and blast through yet. I'm going to do another one because you can see it's still a little bit dirty in there, right? And then again, we're going to just gurgle this up also, again, just like so. We're just kind of gurgling that up. Might be a good idea to wear goggles, because I mean, sometimes you can just push it back too much and it starts spitting. You know, do be careful. I do also like, personally, I mean, it's, you know, be a bit careful taking off our crown just there and then sort of cleaning the end of the needle, right, just to clean that up nicely. And again, a bit of gurgling. Probably a good idea to put this back on if you're going to do that, stab yourself in the finger. Right, and again, we're just going to tip it upside down. So about 2 times normally sort of gets it, but you do it as many times as you need to do to get it clean. Then we can start blasting through. Now, if we were going to jump straight into using acrylic based paints, boom, you're good, ready to go. But we're going to lacquer based paints now. So this is where I like to then repeat the process, but with a lacquer based thinner. So in this case, I'm using the Mr. Colour leveling thinners. Really good for cleaning out your airbrush, actually. And this should sort of clear out any sort of the water based type paints and get our airbrush thinking lacquer based paint ready for the next bit. So back to our engine exhaust area, what we have. Now what we're going to do is there's lots of different colours actually to make this look quite nice and pretty. So we're going to start off with our first colour. So no need for masking, a little bit easy at the moment. So I'm going to start off with, well, I'm trying something new here, to be honest with you. I normally sort of use the Untitled paints for stuff like this, but you know what, I'm going to give it a go. I'm going to try using some of the Mr. Metal colour range, which is rather a nice range. They're nice buffaloable paints. I'm going to start off with 212, which is their iron. Now this is, you know, these paints are quite thin. This one's getting a bit low. Right, I'm just going to pour this in here. Right, we need to bring down our air pressure to start off with. Right, we need it around about, you know, 13 to 10 psi. So I'm just going to bring this right the way down. Right, we don't want too much pressure, but that should be just about right. This stuff evaporates pretty quickly, so make sure you put your lid on. Let's just check that we're spraying nicely. And what we want to do, if we just bring you in, right, is just start spraying this area just here. So I'm just going to start again. We want to just get that really nice misty coat going, which is all pretty sort of nice and easy just to start off with. Right, maybe cut to air, let it dry for a bit, because it's only a misty coat, it should dry pretty quickly. Then we can come in with a light coat, which should, after about maybe 2 coats, it should be all pretty good with this. Right, now do be careful with it, because I mean it does spray through really sort of quickly because it's really thin. It is a bit expensive in the sense that how quickly you sort of get through it, but they're so worth it, these paints. So I'm saying we're almost there. I just want to make sure I get all my angles with this one. Here we go. And then what we want to do is we want to just leave this now to just dry. About 15 minutes does it. These lacquer based paints do dry pretty quickly, and because they're buffable, the second stage does get quite more exciting. So that's basically what you're nicely after there. That's had about 15 minutes to now dry. So what this is where like the cool stuff starts to happen, right? Is get in a nice sort of cloth, and all we need to do is just start rubbing at this, right? And pretty sort of immediately, as you can just see how good these paints are, you know, they literally just kind of just start buffing up and shining up into a really nice natural metal finish, right? But what you might see as well is, you know, just looking here, you know, it's sort of, it has this dust on it first, right? And as you sort of rub away, you start shining up areas, but things like recesses, recess rivets, recess panel lines and stuff, the dust seems to stay in there because you can't reach it, you can't rub away. And as you can see, it just brings that out absolutely gorgeous. You know, you cannot complain. Now we could, right, I might just do this. You could just keep rubbing and rubbing at an area, slowly applying more and more pressure, and what happens is it just gets more and more shiny and more sort of metally looking. Right, I'm just doing this area here because I've got to spray over this area with a different colour, so I don't mind sort of really going nuts at it and just keep rubbing at it. But hopefully, as you can see, it just really sort of starts to shine. I mean, look at that, it's glaring in the camera, you can't quite tell because it's just glaring, right? But that's what you want to do. Just go around, sort of rub it down, get it the way you want it, depending if you want it to be sort of really dirty. You know, you can just lightly, I mean, I've sort of lightly rubbed here, and that's kind of looking sort of like a dirty natural metal finish. But as you say, depending on what you want, you kind of keep rubbing at it or just lightly rub at that. Now the thing is, this is where we've got to start doing some masking and all this kind of stuff, but what we want to do really, I want to kind of seal this in with a gloss coat. It's a bit of a shame. I mean, problem is with gloss coats and natural metal finishes is things like anything like matte coats, gloss coats, it kind of dulls down that natural metal finish, which is a bit of a shame, but it's just something we've kind of got to do because we've now got to sort of mask this area up so we can spray a different colour natural metal finish at the top here, and then there's going to be another colour on that, and then we need to mask the whole thing so as, you know, we can spray the rest of the model the normal sort of colours. So it is a bit of a shame, but you know, we've got to seal it in with a gloss coat. Now sealing it in is quite a nice easy one. Now I'm going to be using Untitled Lacquer's type aqua gloss, although it says it's got lacquers on there, it's not lacquers, it's like a water based, but we're just going to pour this in here. So because it's water based, you know, remember, you know, get some thinners out and get your airbrush thinking water based, right? We'll go more into sort of doing gloss coats, but you know, it's the same sort of principle really. We're just going to spray on this a nice light misty coat, right? Cut to air, let it dry, and then we're going to build up about 2 nice sort of light coats. Right, we don't have to get this perfectly in really sort of nice and shiny ready for deckling or anything like that. You know, it's just so as we can mask this up and it locks it in, it seals it in, and then this is where you really sort of want to, after we've sprayed this, leave it probably overnight to dry, because we want to just make sure it's nicely cured and it's all nicely dry and it's all gone rock hard, right? Because when we put the masking tape on, we don't want to have a situation where you know, the paint's still wet, so it kind of starts to stick to the masking tape a bit, and we try and peel it up, and it's because it's stuck to the masking tape a bit too much, we start peeling up paint, right? That's what we want to do. So sadly, really, we've come to the end of this episode, which is kind of cool because we can now leave this to nicely dry, ready for the next episode, knowing that we should have eliminated all the possibilities of peeling up paint. So we'll be working on that in the next episode. As you can probably already tell, we're going to probably mask up this area, then we're going to use some other colours which we'll probably get through quite quickly, because I've already shown you how to put down these buffable paints and everything. So it's probably just going to be showing you some masking, because actually when it comes to masking, this is going to be quite a complicated sort of shape to mask up, so that will be quite interesting to tackle, as well as, you know, we're going to be messing around with all our exhausts here and getting these natural metal finished up. We won't be doing any sort of fancy sort of weathering or spraying yet, because you know, it's probably best that we just get the rest of the model all nicely sprayed up, and then we can do all that fancy weathering. So hopefully, you know, we'll have this sprayed up, get it masked up, and we'll probably be jumping into the whole model in itself, sort of getting it primed up and moving along, probably spraying. This might be going into 2 episodes, but we've got to spray this white on the underside, which is a little bit different to your normal kind of spraying, because when it comes to white, the problem is when we do things like bleaching, we normally add white to the colour to lighten it and thus bleach it, right? But when the colour's already white, how do you add white to make it lighter? So there's a different way of doing it, and I'll show you how to do that probably the next episode and next episode afterwards, but we'll be nicely moving through with all our spraying. So until then, hopefully you've enjoyed this nice episode, but as always, my name's Bob Waldron, Genesis Models, and I'll catch you in the next episode.